And so I am so excited to introduce our first testimony. Please come on up. Please honor Sam as...
Hi. Hi, I'm Sam. I'm stupid nervous, so slow me down if I start racing this through, okay? Okay, I'm Sam. I am a codependent, and I am working a program for rage control, manipulation, and love and relationships. Hi. Okay, quick disclaimer. I want to preface that anything within my testimony that involves my husband, I have permission from him to share. Thanks, babe. Okay, so I grew up with just my mom and my sister. We lived way out in the country on many acres in the middle of nowhere. My mom worked hard to provide my sister and I with a truly magical childhood filled with running wild through the creeks, making art out of literally anything, and spending every waking minute outside immersed in nature. When I was 8, she met the man who became my stepdad. At first, he was wonderful, but eventually he moved us hundreds of miles away, and once he had us away from all of our safety nets and support systems, he showed us his true colors. It turned out that Mom's Prince Charming was actually an abusive gambling addict. His abuse manifested in a number of ways, but for me, the verbal abuse was the worst. He berated me with very graphic sexual insults, which crushed my self-worth before I even had a chance to know my own identity. It's worth briefly noting here that I had never been allowed to meet my biological father until I was 18 because he was an extremely violent alcoholic. Despite the warnings, immediately following my 18th birthday, I decided to find and reach out to him. Eventually, I made contact and set up a trip to meet him. I had fantasized my entire life about this day. Everything was perfect until it wasn't. He tried to be inappropriate with me, and when I told him to stop, his response made me feel like it was my fault. When I was 21, I met this super cute and funny guy, and then 6 weeks later, we were married. And 9 years later, he's sitting right there and is still my husband. However, it did not take long before I realized that I had married an alcoholic. Ultimately, this is what led me to CR. I originally came to Celebrate Recovery to fix my husband. I thought CR would hand me the magic hammer and drill that would patch up his addiction. I've never been more wrong in my entire life. I quickly learned that my compulsion to fix him, to think that I could control his actions, or to manipulate his environment and his emotions in a way that better suited my motives is why I am actually in recovery. One of my biggest struggles is love and relationships. Because of the abuse, I naturally craved male attention. I quickly found the easiest way to get that attention was to use my body. Their attention, good or bad, filled my void with artificial self-worth. This quick fix idea turned into a lifelong coping mechanism that bled into my marriage. When my husband would drink, my non-existent self-worth would flare, and I would seek attention and validation from other men. This included all forms of emotional, verbal, and physical infidelity. I justified my behavior by shifting the blame on my husband and his addiction. If he would just stop drinking, I wouldn't have to get my attention from someone else. So I thought. Of course, my behavior would trigger nasty arguments. I would never take accountability for my own actions. I always found a way to twist the truth around and contort it so much that I was now the victim and he was the monster. I knew how to influence his emotions and the energy in the room to steer the argument into how I wanted it to go, all while screaming at the top of my lungs, throwing things, and berating him until I physically could not continue from exhaustion. Manipulation and rage. I was recreating my childhood environment. Before I walked through these sanctuary doors into CR, I walked through them into community of hope. I had negative experiences of churches and church people throughout my life, but COH changed that perception. I found Jesus here, I was baptized here, and I found family and support here. I could not get enough of this church, so I signed up for every group, every event, and every volunteer opportunity that I could. Shortly after starting a small group, I had a breakdown. My life and marriage were unraveling before my eyes. This night was the first time I actively heard the voice of Jesus. He told me to call my small group leader. I had only met this woman one time a week ago. She probably didn't even remember my name, and now God is telling me to call her. So I called her. I met with her the next day, and I word vomited all over her my entire life story. She cried with me, she hugged me, she prayed for me, and she encouraged me to buy my first Bible, and then she told me about CR. I walked through these doors November of 2019, and I haven't stopped walking through them since. It was in these rooms that I learned how much responsibility I held in the chaos that was my life. Recovery taught me that hurt people hurt people. My behavior had nothing to do with my husband. Those existed before him. I found a sponsor, joined a step study, and did some of the hardest work I've ever done to get where I am today. Because of recovery, I know that all things I was told growing up by the men who are supposed to be my fathers are all lies. I'm not their daughter. I have a heavenly daughter that calls me his daughter. Wait, I have a heavenly father. I don't have a heavenly daughter. I have a heavenly father that calls me his daughter, and he only speaks truth to me. He tells me that I am loved, I am enough, and I am worthy. That is the narrative that fills my ears now. Because of recovery, I no longer attempt to control or manipulate my husband, and I have had freedom from seeking unhealthy and artificial validation from men for a year and a half. I've experienced so many victories during my journey, but I still get triggered. I still face storms. I still fall short of my recovery goals with my rage sometimes. However, now I have learned healthier approaches, which I didn't know how to do before, and in turn, I have better results. I have a roster of accountability buddies I can call to speak wisdom and support into me, and I have a sponsor that gets real deep and real with me. And she keeps me moving in the right direction, one step, one day, 1 minute at a time. I kept coming back because it works, but only if I work it, and I work it because I am worth it. Thank you for letting me share.
I'm Jamie, and I'm an alcoholic. Sam, that was great. I am just as nervous as you, I promise. Okay, I'm Jamie, I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict. My primary drug of choice is heroin, which is the reason that I first started coming to these rooms. Heroin became my life, and I soon found myself in a vicious cycle of using against my will. I told you I was nervous. As much as I wanted to believe I was going to be able to stop these drugs on my own, I soon found out I couldn't stay clean and sober by myself. After more overdoses than I can remember, numerous car crashes, countless arrests, being on probation 9 times, causing permanent physical damage to my body, which I took so much pride in, my life was consumed and eventually completely lost the will to live. Although I was in the rooms before, the first time I walked through the doors of Celebrate Recovery, about 5 years ago, I had just gotten out of detox, number God only knows. Even though I had no interest in going to an AA meeting, I knew if I was going to get well, I had to. As soon as I walked in, I heard someone yelling my name, and sure enough, it was Curtis. Someone who I hadn't connected with in years. I couldn't figure out why Curtis was so interested in CR, but the following Monday I showed up, and that's when I saw Sarah, and I knew why. Curtis shared what he had gained from Celebrate Recovery, and I knew in my heart that a part of me wanted that too, so I kept showing up. As of next month, I will have 18 months sober, the longest I have ever been able to keep consecutive sobriety. For years, I believed the lie that I wouldn't be able to see 18 months, yet here I am now. I'm halfway through my second year of electrical school. I'm extremely active, going to the gym, playing soccer, along with other sports, attending meetings regularly, coming to Celebrate Recovery regularly. I sponsor men. I serve in multiple locations. I attend church and Bible studies. I have a great relationship with my family today. I have healthy and trustworthy friends. I met my beautiful girlfriend, Coral, here, and I fell in love with her kids, even though they're not mine. And none of that would have been possible if I hadn't continued to have faith and work through all the steps of my recovery. When I was using drugs and alcohol, I was sick in ways that I could today never imagine becoming again. I was the type of addict that would steal from his handicapped brother, the type of addict that would steal your wallet and help you look for it at the same time. I would lie to anyone and everyone. I disrespected women and cheated on them regularly, manipulated any situation to benefit my addiction. I was an addict who overdosed, AMA'd from the hospital, and then woke up 3 hours later, AMAing from the same hospital. Now, by the grace of God, help of good friends, and the rooms of recovery, I am finally free from self-bondage of self. And I love the life that I'm able to live today. I am proud of the man I am. Don't get me wrong, I still have a long way to go. In the last couple months, I've been taught a lot of things, and I still have so much to learn to become the man that God intends me to be. But I am no longer held captive by the obsession and compulsion to use drugs and alcohol. I no longer need to run from my mistakes and shortcomings. I now make it a point to take a daily personal inventory, and believe it or not, most of the time I admit when I am wrong. I am beyond thankful for what Celebrate Recovery has brought to my life. I wouldn't be able to continue to grow in the ways I do today if I never walked in these doors. I am so excited to see what God has planned for me next, and grateful to be alive today, to be able to share part of my story with all of you. My hope and prayer for tonight is that after hearing me speak, if there's anyone in this room who feels like sobriety is a far-fetched dream they can never be able to accomplish themselves, know that God has a plan for you. I honestly believe that the sheer fact that I am standing here in front of you shows if I, of all people, can get sober and transform into the individual God always intended me to be, then I promise any of you can. Keep coming back and don't ever give up. You are not alone. Thanks for letting me share. Thanks for letting me share.
Great job. All right. Thank you guys, everybody, for being here. And you guys are doing awesome. I'm also nervous, and I try to work on this program. So my name's Lindsay. Hi. I'm an addict, alcoholic, and I struggle with codependency. My sobriety date is 11/12, so November 12th, 2014. So next month, God willing, it will be 8 years. Thank you. Thank you very much. So I'm really glad to be here. I'm glad to have found Community of Hope when I did, and I'm really honored to have been asked to share my testimony. So tonight I'm going to share what led me to recovery here at Community of Hope, and what keeps me coming back. So I'm originally from Connecticut. I lived with both of my parents as an only child. My mom struggled with mental health and alcoholism, and my father, also an alcoholic, had a pretty severe gambling addiction. From a young age, I felt alone, unimportant, scared, and hopeless. I began covering up for their dysfunction by caretaking, people-pleasing, and stuffing my feelings. This led me to look for outside solutions for an inside problem. When I found drugs and alcohol, I felt alleviated of all the pain and suffering I had experienced internally. I used them as a way to escape. This caused more chaos and more distraction from the good in life and brought me down a dark path. I was not functioning. I ran away from college, and I couldn't hold a job or any meaningful relationships. I struggled with cocaine, heroin, alcohol, gambling, men, really anything to get me outside of myself. I tried relying on self-will, reading self-help books, exercising, going to therapy, a few outpatient groups, legally enforced DUI classes, and methadone maintenance. I'd also tried going to meetings on and off, but I never got a sponsor or truly opened up. None of it seemed to work. My parents eventually confronted me and found a program for me to go to in Florida. I was in and out of treatment programs for the next year and continued to try to run the show myself, continuing to fail each time. It became very clear that the party was over. I was not participating in my own life. I was constantly lying. I was stealing. I felt worthless. by November 2014, I had what they call the gift of desperation. I was finally ready to do anything I could to not go on living with the defeat, the hurt, the shame, the insanity. My parents confronted me again, and I came back down to Florida. I once heard that this program is not for people that want it, and it's not for people that need it. It's simply for people that do it. That really stuck with me because I've needed this program for a very long time. I even wanted it, but it took me a while to actually do it. I reluctantly went to an all-women's treatment center. I cried a lot. I opened up. I listened to the suggestions and went to a very strict halfway house after, where I learned small but meaningful tasks like making my bed, doing chores, and calling people for support. They would actually call and verify that I spoke with 3 people. I had to keep a job and attend meetings daily. I found a sponsor, I worked the steps, and continued to stay clean and sober. I got connected to people in recovery, got a job working in recovery, and it quickly became integrated in my life. My life got exceptionally better. So much so that I stopped attending meetings entirely because I felt like I was getting my recovery from other avenues. I stopped calling my sponsor. I stopped being excruciatingly honest with those around me because I had this misaligned thought that I had to be outwardly strong and okay for everyone else. I started noticing that I would wake up restless, irritable, and discontented. But I kept pushing along for a few years. My pride and ego kept me sick, although I was not using drugs and alcohol this time. When I first met my husband, he mentioned Celebrate Recovery at Community of Hope a few times in passing. But while I was not completely identifying as a Christian, I put it off for a while. It seems like any time that I have a big change, a big life change, I tend to isolate and rely on self-sufficiency, which for me is a really scary place to be in. When I moved in with him, I started working remotely, and I quickly realized the lack of support and program that I had. I began acting out again in codependent behaviors such as people-pleasing, not voicing my feelings appropriately, blaming, anger, and unspoken expectations leading to resentment. This ended up putting a lot of pressure on him and our marriage. Again, feeling desperate, insecure, and uncomfortable in my own skin, I did what I learned when I first got sober. I came to a Celebrate Recovery meeting here at Community of Hope. I raised my hand in the small group after, and I asked for help. I was met with grace and love from strong women who are in this room tonight. I was asked to get coffee with one of them, and full of anxiety, I went. This person talked with me and shared her experience, strength, and hope, and it reminded me of what working a good program can do. There are so many miracles in this room tonight, and I'm honored, and it is a blessing to be a part of it today. I've been shown the truth Jesus offers and feel comfortable here to still ask questions to strengthen my faith. Since coming to Celebrate Recovery at Community of Hope, I've learned again that if I allow myself to be vulnerable with safe people, utilize discernment, speak and act honestly, and lean in on my faith, I can overcome adversity with the help of God and community and live with love and hope. I keep coming back to ensure that I continue to work a strong program. I do have a sponsor. I call my sponsor. I call others. I help others, and I feel better. It's not always easy, but it is simple. I tend to overcomplicate things. Celebrate Recovery at Community of Hope keeps me on track. Since working this program, I'm becoming more comfortable with myself. I'm able to show up more authentically each day, and my relationships have improved, which has all greatly improved my quality of life again. Thank you for letting me share.
Howdy. Well, Curtis asked me to share a little bit about long-time sobriety. Don't drink and don't die. Thanks for letting me share. Okay, he wants me to do the rest of it. Rats. All right, my name is Larry, and I'm a recovering alcoholic and addict. That was fun. My sobriety date is April 4th, 1986. And I know somebody is out there going, I wasn't even born then. And I say this not because I'm some person with great willpower. But I know it is from a power greater than I. And Without this power, I will again turn into that hopeless drunk, eaten up with despair, self-loathing, and emptiness. Yeah, I'm nervous too, okay. I was raised in a fairly religious family, but my perception of God as a little boy was that God was on the altar, the priest had the key, and I was never going to be good enough to get to God. And I carried this misconception until I hit my last bottom, which found me passed out with my sawed-off shotgun in my head and my finger on the trigger. And when I came to, my finger was still on the trigger. The Lord was the only thing keeping me from pulling it. The next day, my good drinking buddy, who had gotten sober himself, came and offered me the gift. And I reached out in desperation to any God of my misunderstanding in the hopes of relief from my self-imposed prison. I'm not going to talk about my drinking because we all have war stories. I'd rather speak about how the Lord brought me out of the darkness. I get it. After I got out of the rehab, I was adopted by a group of old-timers who knew the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And they took me on as a group project. I needed work. And they got me into the steps in my first month before I had any apprehension about them. And I was writing where my alcoholism had taken me, and I told someone my stuff. I always lied to God. I'll never do it again. And I always lied to you, pay you back tomorrow. And I always lied to myself. I'm not going to drink today. But when we put all three together, it had an impact. And it made it real. So I invited this God of my misunderstanding along for the ride as I cleaned up my past, making amends to those I hurt. And I found the freedom from fear of people and places, except microphones. They gave me some simple suggestions in the beginning, like making phone calls, go to meetings, and get involved in service, like making coffee and emptying ashtrays. Yeah, that used to be a thing. They gave me the keys to several meeting places long before my mother gave me the keys to her house, but those came in time. I believed in some kind of God that had removed my compulsion to drink, so I started to explore this God thing. And there's a line in the big book that says, be quick to see where religious people were right. And I was always quick to see where they were wrong. So this line convicted me, and I started to explore Community of Hope. Oh, about, 19 years ago? Something like that. I can't do the math. But I started reading the Bible. But I thought the bass and drums was church was a little strange. I got over that. Now, just because I got sober does not mean that life is all rosy rainbows and pink unicorns. Life happens, and in this life you will have trouble. But through time and recovery, I received a hope and faith that the light at the end of the tunnel isn't a train coming my way. I have friends, sponsors, a wife, a church family to lift me up in times of need. And most important, a loving God I have come to understand. I heard somebody call this resilience. In the original manuscript of the 12 Steps, it says, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of this course of action, we tried to carry this message to others, especially alcoholics, and to practice these principles in all our affairs. The others was a big one. And considering the steps were derived directly from the Bible, we think this will work for everyone that has a hurt, habit, or hang-up. So today, I try to live by these principles, and the compulsion to drink is long gone. But I stay on guard against the thinking and actions that can lead me back. I never want to forget who I was at my worst. The longer I am away from my bottom, my brain can say, left unguarded, well, it wasn't that bad, or it's been a long time. Maybe you don't really have a problem. So I'm known for saying, my own group is tired of hearing me saying it, most alcoholics die of a bad memory. They forget what it was like. I don't want to take this gift for granted. Thanks.
Larry is one of my favorite speakers. And as soon as he opens his mouth, I know the tears are coming, and you never disappoint because you share from your heart. And so thank you for that, Larry. I know we pick on you all the time, but thank you for that. My name is Christine. Hi, guys. And this is a really emotional night for me to look around this room and see all the faces that were here on the first night and just a few weeks ago as well. It has been a journey. People tell me all the time, look around, Christine, look what you've done. And you know what? I look around and see what God has done through you guys for me. And I'm grateful for that. So I'm Christine, and I work the steps of recovery because my natural tendency is to take control and do things my way and to do them alone. I have found that I am in need of continual course correction so I don't return to where I was 19 years ago. The year 2003, I remember walking into my first recovery meeting. I was scared. God, was I scared. I was alone and desperate for something, but I didn't even know what I was searching for. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. As a matter of fact, I felt nothing. I was just this numb person who had no feelings about anything. I remember my group leader sharing the guidelines of what a recovery meeting would look like, and the only one that I really heard was that we were here to share our experience, strength, and hope. And I thought to myself, that's great news. Maybe somebody could help me. Then everything changed. She opened her share by saying, my name is Karen, and I've been in recovery for 20 years. I'm like, what the freak? 20 years? Are you nuts? I thought to myself, there is no way this girl still needs to be leading this group after 20 years. If she doesn't have her stuff together now, there's no hope. So I really didn't think the program was going to work. I humored the group, but truly, I was really pissed. I raised my hand to ask a question, and she looked over at me and said, I'm sorry, in this group, we don't ask questions. I was like, are you kidding me? But you can stay after group and ask any questions that you want, and I'll be happy to answer them. So here comes my manipulation. The great manipulator I was changed my question to a statement, and thus my recovery journey began. I said, my name is Christine, and I'm here for something. I'm not even sure what. Maybe it's hope I'm looking for. Here comes my passive-aggressive self. And after hearing those guidelines you just shared, the one that says we're here to share our experience, strength, and hope, I was really excited to hear that. And then when I heard you were working the program for 20 years and you're still there, still here, it's not freaking helpful at all. You should not share that in this meeting. I said, it's actually super discouraging. Mm-hmm. And I know some of you are not surprised that I said that, right? Mm-hmm. She smiled and used my all-time not favorite saying that you hear at recovery, and she said, keep coming back. Mm-hmm. To this day, I still hate that phrase. I wanted to get up and leave, but I didn't want anyone to think I was a quitter. So I remained silent for the rest of the meeting, and I just listened. At that time, I didn't know that I had just learned my first tool of recovery. And that tool is called taking the cotton out of your mouth and putting it in your ears, which simply means quit talking and start listening, because all of my talking got me in a whole lot of trouble. So just to recap, remember that I was angry at the leader for being in recovery for 20 years. Well, this coming April, I will be in recovery for 20 years. So God has a sense of humor. I'll keep coming back. Thank you, Larry. Recovery has introduced me to several huge blessings in my life that I am forever grateful for. I was introduced to the concept of not doing life alone. I used to do life all by myself, so no one could hurt or disappoint me, and I would also choose to do things myself because at least they would be done right. That's what I thought. But I can now recognize that those beliefs were not true. Hurt and disappointment are a part of life, but recovery has taught me tools that allow me to feel the hurt and disappointment but not be swallowed up by them. I've also learned that through the 12 steps, that each step says we and not I. And since working through the steps, I have been able to look at life through a we mentality. One of the best tools that recovery has introduced me to was a sponsor. A sponsor is someone who walks my recovery journey alongside of me. They encourage me and speak truth with love to me, especially when I'm not making healthy choices. It took me almost a year of recovery, attending recovery, before I was even willing to try life with a sponsor because I thought doing it my way by myself was the best way. I could sponsor myself. How many of y'all thought that before? Mm-hmm. Having a sponsor was and is the best gift that I've given to myself. My sponsor for the last 15 years is barely 5 feet tall and in her late 80s, and she is tough as nails. She doesn't sugarcoat it. She speaks it as she sees it, and that's exactly what I need in my life. I'm a bit of a hard head. You could just ask my husband. He's over there smiling. My sponsor helps me sort through my feelings and past triggers before entering into a conversation that definitely could have a tendency to require me to make amends at the end of it. For those of you who know me, I don't like to make amends. It's not on my fun list of things to do. So I'd rather make a phone call so I can enter into those conversations appropriately. My sponsor knows me in the most vulnerable way possible. I can share the ugliest of thoughts with her, and she still points out the good in me. And she helps me navigate through my ugliness. I once told her that I was once told that if I really wanted to get all I could out of my relationship with my sponsor, I must be willing to walk naked before her. Not really, but you know what I mean. No secrets. There were no secrets at all. She knew everything I've ever done and all of my not-so-nice thoughts and unhealthy thoughts. My sponsor has ticked me off. I've hung up on her. I've had to call her back and make amends, sometimes not very happily, but I do it because I know it's the right thing to do. She has encouraged me and redirected my steps. She gives me another perspective, one that I usually can't see because I am too emotionally close to the situation to be objective. She says the tough stuff for me, which is truth, and most times I don't even want to hear it or embrace it. But I am reminded that she has nothing at all to gain or lose by sharing truth with me. She shares with me because she loves me, and that helps ease the sting of what she has told me as I process it and let it sink in. Her wisdom has always led me to life-changing change in me. A healthy life for me is a series of adjustments. And my sponsor has helped me by giving me some course correction, probably a lot of course correction. Some is not a good word. Next, I've been given a forever family. And when I look around this room, that's what I see. You guys are my forever family. We may not all be in the same place in our recovery, but we are here because we want something different than we currently have, or we have found what we're looking for, and we surely don't want to lose it, so we keep coming back. I've learned that the depth of my recovery is based on the amount that I am willing to put into it. By sharing in small groups, participating in step studies, and working the steps, I have been able to identify that most of my character defects that are not so pretty do have value when my motive is pure in using them. For example, the defect of gossip shows up for me in sharing other people's situations or stories without their permission. I have learned that I can share my own personal experiences rather than others, and most times they're helpful for the others that I'm sharing with. So once was a defect, and now it's an asset. Control also shows up for me in micromanaging others. When I'm working my program, my organizational and administrative skills are on fire. It is a gift that I've been given. I have learned, though, that I can delegate and give freedom to others to complete the task. Now, I'd be lying if I didn't tell you in my head, I still think my way of completing the tasks are better. I struggle with that. But what I have learned is that I'm not responsible for my first thought. It's what I do with the thought that I am responsible for. So when those thoughts come, and they still do, I have to remind myself that my way isn't the only way. And if their way doesn't work, hopefully they will learn, like I did, from my mistakes. That's another example of my defect turned into an asset. In recovery, they say you have to take steps one at a time. I wanted, and still sometimes want to take an elevator. And then I'm reminded of a message that Billy gave a long time ago that was, step, step. And I was like, is he ever going to stop stepping across that stage? But it reminds me that it's a process. So every step that I have taken in my journey has led me to today. And for today, I am happier and more fulfilled than I've ever thought I could be. The steps alone aren't the answer for what ails me, but working the steps has led me to the answer of who can help me, and his name is Jesus. And I'm not sure where in the process of working those steps that I took him off a shelf and made him an everyday relational person with me, but he is the best part of my recovery. And if you don't know him, let's get coffee, because I'd love to tell you about him. Throughout my recovery journey, I have had many titles. From coffee maker, I didn't do the cigarette butts like Larry, but I did greeter, small group leader. I helped run the ministry. I was a sponsor. I've even been called by Curtis the Alexa of recovery. That made me chuckle. I still laugh every time I think about that. But none of those titles are what I want to be remembered for. I remember a time when I heard about recovery and thought to myself, those people are basket cases, and they're telling everyone I will surely never be one of them. But what I have come to know is that what I want to be remembered for is standing out rather than forgotten for blending in. And I think I'm right here where God wants me to be. I am one of those recovery people, and I am super grateful that you are one with me. You are my people. When I look at my life, I see an experience. Recovery for me is sharing my experiences of the journey with anyone who is interested in knowing how my mess has now become my message. So with that being said, my name is Christine. I am an experienced sharer who would love to tell you about my Jesus and recovery. Thank you for letting me share.
Hey, y'all, can we just thank them one more time, all 4 or 5 of the folks who shared? Praise God for that. It's an honor for me to just put just an exclamation point at the end of our evening and to just say again a couple things to you that I think are live in the room. One is this. I feel very strongly that I need to share. Some of you are here tonight because you need to hear through the stories you've just heard that can be you. And there's some people in the room that need to hear that. This can be you, what you heard tonight. And there was just so much strength and so much hope coming off the stage. I want to share that. It's amazing to think that this is 10 years, right, Larry? I mean, it's hard to imagine that it's been 10 years. We were 14 and a half years in rented facilities when we moved to our property in 2011. And we had tried on 2 separate occasions to actually start recovery at our church, actually officially celebrate recovery. And we were told no both times because we didn't have a building. And the thought was that if we were doing recovery in rented facilities, and since we weren't in charge of that, if they closed the building in some fashion, people who needed hope and were coming wouldn't be able to come and experience the hope that we were offering, and so we were told no. So I want you to notice that when we moved onto the property in 2011, it was less than a year later we started recovery, because we feel like this is in the DNA of our fellowship. And so I just want you to know how profound this ministry is and how powerful this ministry is. I read a book last year that was really meaningful to me by Ian Cron, and it's entitled The Story of You. And what Ian Cron says in the book basically is this: we experience life as a story, right? We don't experience life as a math problem or as a science problem. And we don't look to math and science when things internally in our lives are not working well. We want to put the pieces of our story together. And Ian Cron makes a powerful observation about, in his book, The Story of You, where he reminds us that when we're born into somebody else's story. They have a part that they want you to play. And one of the real challenges of life is to come to the place where, as adults, free thinking, wise thinking, I would want to say, of course, Christ following thinking, we take control and we begin to write our own story, the story of us. And I really believe with all my heart tonight, this is what you've heard. You've heard people who have, at one point or another in their journey, said, I'm not going to be a part of this story anymore. God is still writing a story, and he can write a story in which I am defining in some ways what that story is all about. And when we do that with the help of the Holy Spirit in a protected and safe community, like we're experiencing many of us here, God can do amazing things. And I just hope tonight with all of my heart that some of you who are here, who might be, realizing even in this space tonight, I have been playing a bit part in someone else's story. It's time for me to write my own. That maybe tonight can be the beginning for you through what we offer here at Recovery to begin to get the pieces together of your own story and start writing. And God is here by the power of His Spirit to help you do that. And we'd be honored to have you with us. This is a joy. I want to certainly shout out to Vance and Christine. So grateful for you and partnering with us all these years. You're sitting next to Billy. Billy, you've got lots of seeds planted in here, what God has done. Curtis and Sarah, God is using you in this current moment, and you're helping so many people, and we love you. And it's just a joy to be able to come and just add my kudos and my response to this moment. Praise God. Curtis, I'm going to invite you up. Would you come and just lead us out? You welcome him as he comes.
Hello, everybody. My name is Curtis. I'm an addict and an alcoholic. Oh, does anybody know what I'm going to say? Wow, that was powerful. Yes. I know many of you may be feeling a little bit of intimidation, maybe a little nervous that you're here in a place like this, but as you experienced all of these men and women coming up here, they all said they were nervous, but none of us said, well, then get off the stage. In fact, they said, keep going. And that's what you're going to find here on a weekly basis. Is people when you're feeling stuck, people when you're feeling let down, people when you're feeling discouraged, nervous, anxious. You're going to find people that aren't going to say, well, then just quit. You're going to find people that are saying, just keep going. We have your back. We love you and we support you. Because just like Pastor Dale just shared, we want you to be able to write your own story of how God has worked in your life. And we want you to be able to come up and share it here. And so for that, I am so grateful for everybody being here tonight.